So I want to talk with you about the vitality, the role of spirituality in any recovery process. I think it's invaluable in addiction recovery, but I also believe that if a person is in recovery from past trauma, that it too is indispensable. And my experience, sadly, is the two things that mental health clinicians especially tend to struggle talking about are spirituality and sexuality, which I'm pretty sure are the two most basic aspects of life. But if we're not comfortable within ourselves, we're not going to be comfortable talking with other people about their beliefs, their values, or their practices. I hate prefacing myself, but I want to differentiate spirituality from religion. And I most often do that based on an adage that my friends in AA use, which is that religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell, and spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. So, what I love about spirituality is that nobody can tell me I'm doing it wrong. I get to pick and choose what works for me, and I think the biggest pitfall that people jump into is the idea that it has to be based in a deity or it has to be based in something that's established. And that simply isn't true. Another acronym from AA, GOD, it stands for a group of drunks. And the idea of that as a higher power is simply an acknowledgement that the organization of Alcoholics Anonymous has more power than the individual does and a greater ability to help the individual stay sober. I've worked with folks whose higher power was nature. I've worked with folks whose higher power was a collection of friends and family. And I've worked with other folks who found their spiritual experience within an organized religion, and that's great. I say whatever works for a person is wonderful. I don't want to judge that, and it's interesting to me that in my role as a trauma clinician, that very often people do ask me questions about God. And if there's anything I'm not an expert on, that would be at the top of the list. But I'm happy to share what worked for me. On top of the many ways in which I'm a bit of a misfit, I also happen to be a minister's son. And I was raised in the church, I was given lots of doctrine, and I tried a number of different religions, and none of them really worked for me. Spirituality works exceptionally well for me. And for me, spirituality is really about connection. Having kindred spirits in my life, having people that I relate to very well, that understand me very well, that help me to feel a part of something that's greater than myself is really indispensable in my ongoing recovery and in my continued journey. So I encourage people who have never experienced religion, excuse me, never experienced a 12-step program to just read them over and look a little bit deeper. I've practiced all 12, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions that people have about 12 steps, particularly around connotations of God and religion. And what I've learned is that the steps require that I give away things I don't want, that I surrender those, and that I embrace changes that I do want. So let's break that down just a little bit. The 12 steps start with the concept of surrendering, which to a lot of folks feels like giving up. And what I say to them is the only thing that you're really giving up are things that you don't want, starting with the fight you have with you, the battle you have with you for control. In step one, the only thing, quite literally, that a person is surrendering is their addiction, and they're asking a power greater than themselves to take that away. There's also an acknowledgement in step one that of powerlessness and the idea that our lives have become unmanageable as a direct result of addiction, of our use of substances or behavioral addictions or whatever our drug of choice was. Steps 2 and 3 are about forming a connection to a power greater than self. Steps 4 and 5 are about looking at resentments, past pain and anger that we continue to carry, and how it is that we'll release that. looking for our part in things and exploring changes that we need to make. In step 6 and 7, what we're surrendering are defects of character, things about myself that I don't like, things that I know need to change. When I get to 8 and 9, I'm looking at making amends and righting wrongs, apologizing, taking responsibility for things that I've done in the past. Everything that I'm surrendering are things that I don't really truly want. The hang up that I and I think millions of others have had over the years is that in step 3, we're asked to surrender our will. And I thought about that for a long time, and I thought, well, I'm giving up this really, really super important thing, and what I'm going to get in return is probably kind of boring, or at least not very exciting. And I was shocked and surprised to find out that it's been anything but that. I joke with people in recovery that my plans suck and my higher powers plans are consistently far greater. In fact, what the universe, I refer to my higher power as the universe because it's open, it's inclusive. So what the universe wants from me is far greater than what I think I want. And when I'm willing to be receptive and when I'm paying attention, I find that the universe is putting good people and good experiences in my path. It's up to me to receive those. It's interesting to me to talk with people about how they pray, because I notice a common theme of people in recovery where we will ask for the sun and the moon and the stars for people that we love, but we'll ask for almost nothing for ourselves, and we'll continuously put ourselves at the end of that prayer. So what I encourage folks to do is to ask the universe for everything. I don't believe that my higher power is Santa Claus. I don't think that my asking actually changes what's going to happen at all on God's end. It changes what I'm going to do. The greater the awareness I have of what it is that I need, what it is that's missing in my life, and the greater sense that I have of what it is my higher power wants for me, the more likely I am to acknowledge it, recognize it, and receive it when it's placed in my path. So those are all just things that work for me. I would love to hear from you. What works for you spiritually? What kind of traditions or rituals have you placed in your own life to give you a greater sense of purpose, to give you outlets for your passion, and hopefully to help you find greater serenity and peace? If you're looking for something that's helpful, I highly recommend the Serenity Prayer, the 3rd-step prayer from AA, and the 7th-step prayer from AA, because those have all been pretty powerful guiding influences in my life. And it's a great example of eclecticism, where I can take what works for me and leave the rest, and I can do that in all different faiths and in all different types of programs.